Hey everybody, John the Editor here, obviously. Well, maybe not so obviously, because hey, we're in color today. Don't get used to it. And the first thing I'm going to say is, I'm going to predict an objection, and I'm going to answer that objection to what I am doing today. Why, John, are you wasting your time talking to this individual? There was a comment on my previous video addressing the same person, and they used some more colorful language than individual, although it was a one-syllable word beginning with C and ending with... So why? Why am I giving this person, why am I engaging and giving them more exposure? They are an illustrative person. They are an exemplar. This woman is every woman. Now, I don't mean to say all women are identical to her and share her identical viewpoint, but she is a typical 20-something-year-old, and her attitudes reflect the attitudes of a major fraction of her generation. So, in addressing her, or using her as an example, we're looking at a very commonly shared point of view. That's why it's useful to address her. Now, the second point I'm going to make is that this video is probably going to run a little bit long, and so I'm going to split it into parts. I'm not going to divide it into multiple videos, but I'm going to put some titles on the screen here of different sections of this video, which you can click on and go to the direct section if you want to, if you don't want to watch the whole damn thing.
Hi guys, so I know it's been quite a while since my last video.
Now, the other reason I've partitioned this video up into topics is that because this is a direct address to the YouTube user Alexandra Blue, and I'm relatively experienced in issues of the men's rights movement and now MGTOW, which is how I presently identify, and I'm speaking from the perspective of community organized compassion and kindness. I have an awful lot to fill her in with, and I don't want to overwhelm her, and lay more on her than she can take in. So we're going to keep this tight and limited to a few points in her video. Now, I wanted to talk about this last, but Alexandra Blue talks about it first, so I will as well. And that is the female chameleon. Now, before we get into it, I'm going to just play a couple of clips from early on in her update video. I have edited this for brevity. I've taken a little rambling bit she was rambling on about first-wave feminism. So what you see is edited, but not changed in content.
I think feminism, and I have changed my use of the term quite a bit.
I think feminism was important with the first wave, securing women's right to vote and women's property rights. But as feminism progressed,
I haven't really changed my core beliefs. I just think the term women's rights applies more to the person that I am and to my beliefs more than the term feminist.
Did you catch that? I'll play the first part of that again, in case you missed it. I'm not going to tell you what to look for, I'm going to play it again so you can see it.
I think feminism, and I have changed my use of the term quite a bit. I haven't really changed my core beliefs. I just think the term...
So what she just said there, spaced out over, a minute and a half, which I condensed down, is that she is abandoning the label feminism, but is not altering her core beliefs. And I completely believe her. I believe exactly what she's saying. But, she's like in her probably early 20s and doesn't have the self-awareness to realize what she's revealing by saying that. This is the female chameleon in action, in the wild. Now, it's important to understand that I'm not commenting on this and going, aha, I caught you, you evil so-and-so. I don't even think she's likely aware of what she's demonstrating. This isn't like a malicious, mustache-twirling villain changing one mask for another. This is just a childish psychological manifestation of she will conform to whatever gives her plausible deniability. And again, you got to understand, this isn't like a malicious, calculating, villainous disguise being taken off and put on. This is just a person who blows in whatever direction the wind is blowing in. So if being a feminist gives her plausible deniability, great, that's what she is. As soon as she gets the pushback that she got from the last video, the wind is start changing, she's abandoning that label and becoming women's rights, because that now gives her plausible deniability. And I doubt she's even aware that she did that so nakedly and openly. But that's the chameleon at work. And that's why it's so difficult to trust women. You know, misogyny, right? We have to look at real world behavior. This is manifested in a huge amount of feminist public rhetoric and talking points. Even though she's now abandoning the label feminist, her viewpoint hasn't changed. But let's move on to the next point.
And lately I've come across the term women's rights as opposed to the feminist movement. I haven't really changed my core beliefs. I just think the term women's rights applies more to the person that I am and to my beliefs more than the term feminist.
Well, now that you, Alexandra Blue, are not a feminist, and you are identifying yourself with the label women's rights, or at least your viewpoint with the label women's rights, maybe you will be the first person in the entire history of the universe, really, to answer the following question, which has been asked a billion times. This isn't Carl Sagan's Cosmos, but we are talking billions. What rights do women not have? For real. Like, that's not a rhetorical, it's not like go on to a rant and, you know, denounce people's attitudes. I mean specifically, what actual rights do women not have that, you know, men do? I would love to know. If nothing else, answer that one question. I'll have more questions for you later if you get past that one.
I'm trembling and I'm shaking.
There was a men's rights group at my university. Well, they wanted to start one up, but it was actually shut down by my school student union. And one of my friends actually was a founder of that group, and in no way did he indicate at all that he hated women. I don't believe that he hates women at all. But he had a whole bunch of feminists attacking this group and saying how it was anti-female, but just judging from my conversation with him, it didn't appear that way whatsoever. So I was very saddened when they shut this men's rights group down, because I think it's quite hypocritical. If you're giving women the right to talk about their issues, then men should have the right to talk about their issues as well.
This is interesting. You have a friend who tried to start a men's rights group or organization at your university, and they got shut down by the student union, which you identified that as being hypocritical. I think you were nowhere near strong enough in your language there. It is despicably shameful in what we pretend is a free society. But they got shut down. It's a tragedy. I have a real question for you. When the student union was shutting this organization down, what did you do to defend this minority? And let's be real, we're talking a minority, especially on university and college campuses, where, you know, every Western university has a multi-million-dollar funded women's center and no corresponding men's center or men's resources. What did you do to defend these individuals, your friend, in this action of them being silenced and shut down by the student union? Did you do anything? Or did you just do nothing except say maybe quietly and under your breath to some friend standing next to you, well, that's a shame. But let's move forward.
Because there are horrible women out there, but there are also horrible men out there. So I think the first step is just to realize that there are horrible women and men out there. And I think the problem here is we're having trouble communicating that, and people just have so many different definitions and people have so many different experiences.
I know where you're going here. I'm going to stop you, and I'm going to say you're right that there are horrible women and there are horrible men. And there's horrible white people, and horrible black people, and horrible Chinese people, and horrible East Indians, and horrible North American Indians, and then there's lovely people in each of these groups as well. The problem isn't that there's horrible men, or particularly that there's horrible women. It is that feminism, which is the label I know you've abandoned, but you also say you haven't altered your core viewpoint. Feminism is the prevalent, it is the dominating political ideology of our culture. It is almost a state religion, and some would argue that it in fact actually is a state religion, even in Canada. And although it is a political ideology, that is to say, it's a thing, it's an idea, it's not a physical thing like a, bike light or keys. It's just a thing that exists in people's minds, formed from ideas and rhetoric and language and all this stuff. It doesn't have a physical manifestation except in people's behavior. It claims to represent a biological demographic. It claims to represent roughly half the population, or a little bit more than half actually, which are women. So it's a political ideology claiming to speak for and on behalf of women. And when you look at the tactics and the strategy and the actual behavior of feminists and feminist organizations, you see censorship, silencing, intimidation, blacklisting, harassment, and violence through proxy. Now you put all that stuff together and you take away the label feminism and the details of what that censorship is in behalf of, what you have is fascism. And it's a viewpoint that's actually growing in power rather than shrinking, despite the present pushback that's happening in the media in the last, couple of years. It's not just that you have nasty people in one group and nasty people in another. There is also the political ideology, which is the dominant ideology in this culture, and exercising a lot of tactics and public behavior that looks to many people, many intelligent, thoughtful, well-educated people, looks like fascism.
What I wanted to talk about was the MGTOW movement. So I received this definition from a viewer, and I really, really liked this definition of the MGTOW movement. Here it is. It's about building inner strength, being better within and independent. From my point of view, it is not a fight against feminism or women. And I think that definition sounds great.
Well, a couple of things here. The first off is that definition, as was supplied to you of what MGTOW is, being building inner strength, being better within and independent, and that it's not a fight against feminism or women, is not a description of MGTOW. That's a nice, happy, hippy-dippy rhetoric to describe self-empowerment, and anybody can do that. Great, good for them. I encourage everybody to do that. It's not MGTOW. MGTOW is a phenomenon. I'd call it that, not a movement, but whatever you call it, phenomenon or movement. It is a phenomenon in society in response to, in reaction to, a set of social, economic, and legal pressures which are massively disadvantageous to men, are harmful to their lives. And the fraction of MGTOW who know about the name and read about it on blogs and make videos and so on are like the tiniest tip of an iceberg of a larger phenomenon happening within society. And it's reactive to male-destructive, gynocentric aspects of society. If you want to call that against feminism or against women, you're welcome to. I call it against gynocentrism, and in self-defense and, self-preservation in a hostile social and legal environment. The second part that you said, that you approve of it, that is actually not a good thing. You can approve or disapprove of things, but any definition of MGTOW that is approved of by a female, particularly one who has very recently self-identified as a feminist.
So hopefully you are a feminist. I'm a feminist, you should be a feminist too.
Should be treated with utmost suspicion, because if you approve of it, then it provides you a means to continue exploiting and using men. I'm sure you're going to complain that you don't do any such thing. Whether you realize it or not, you do. The final thing is, I'm going to give you a better definition of MGTOW that I think most people who self-define and who practice MGTOW will actually agree is a good definition. It's as follows. MGTOW is a movement, this guy says movement, I say phenomenon, is a movement comprised of men who are either dissatisfied with the current state of gender relations in society or are abandoning the traditional expectations and responsibilities society places on men when it comes to reproduction and marriage. These individuals pursue their own interests for their own sake. They reject the male role of protector and provider, and they replace it with a paradigm of their own creation or their own selection. Rather than thinking, how will I be able to build and provide for a family, they ask themselves, how can I feel fulfilled in life? And for them, this thought process is made without regard for female approval or acceptance or societal approval or acceptance. That's a real definition of MGTOW. Not this happy, clappy, hippie, self-empowerment gibberish.
Unfortunately, I think different people have different definitions of what the MGTOW movement means to them.
That's actually correct. There's a lot of different definitions. In fact, it's highly individualistic. There's no leader. But all definitions, all valid definitions of MGTOW require a departure, a chosen departure from male disadvantaging, gynocentric social and legal institutions, and the most prominent is marriage. Departure from marriage, you cannot be married in MGTOW, and if anybody who claims that you can is selling some other agenda.
And as much as I would like to believe that the MGTOW movement is about independence, it just seemed like a lot of female bashing was going on that website, and I just have to pull up a few things right now. I screen capped part of the website. It says, never ever apologize to women. And then later on, it says, remember these bitches are all convinced men are stupid. They will even endorse the t-shirt, boys are stupid, throw rocks at them. Now, I do not endorse this shirt whatsoever, and I don't think most feminists even endorse this shirt. That, like I said, I'm not a feminist, but I don't think most feminists believe in killing men.
You don't think most feminists believe in killing men? Well, most don't openly espouse the idea or promote the idea of killing men, but there are some very high-profile and influential feminists who absolutely do believe in killing men, some of whom teach university courses. An example, a prime example, being Elizabeth Sheehy. You're in Canada. In fact, you're somewhere in Ontario, I believe. Now, I don't know if you went to the University of Ottawa, but you're in the same part of the country. Elizabeth Sheehy is a professor of law at the University of Ottawa, author of this book, which argues for the legalization of spousal murder only by women as a preferred method for exiting a violent or a dysfunctional relationship. Sheehy's preferred method for women to exit violent relationships, which she lobbies for and has written a book in defense of, is to kill them, rather than just pack up your bags and leave if you're in a bad relationship. And other than the various arms of the men's rights, men's movement, MGTOW movement, hardly anybody, certainly no major feminist organization, has stood up and said, we denounce and reject this. Sheehy is treated like an honored intellectual elite by most of the media. And she's a university professor teaching feminist law students and writing books espousing murder. If most feminists don't believe in killing men, they certainly do believe in or hold a contempt and a loathing for men. The foundation of feminism is the idea of culture-wide victimhood of women by men. And in order to believe that, you have to believe that men as a demographic are sociopathic and malevolent, which is a form of contempt and loathing.
Run through the mill, I can't move around and I can't stand still.
So I don't think the term MGTOW is the same as men's rights. I believe in fighting for men's rights, but this just seems like a lot of female bashing to me.
Well, Alexandra Blue says two things in this final segment, both of which are correct, although she neglects elements of both of them. One of them is that the MGTOW and the men's rights movement, MGTOW and men's rights, are, although related, two separate movements. They both address essentially the same problems, a gynocentric society that is toxic to men. Although they approach this problem differently in each case. Men's rights is trying to reform a lot of these problems. And in fact, I call these two areas of the manosphere, I call it the reformers, that's the men's rights movement, and the abandoners. I am formerly in the reformer category, and I am now in the abandoner category. And we'll come in a minute to why there is woman bashing coming from, I guess, both camps. But when you continue to lobby and advocate and publish and talk about and agitate on issues like male suicide, which is 4 to 5 times higher than women, male disenfranchisement in education, sentencing disparities, family court, living on the streets, homelessness, infant genital mutilation, and so on. And in response to these real issues, what you get is, fuck you, get back on the treadmill and provide a tax base for me to get free stuff from the government and keep marrying women and shut the fuck up and do as you're told because a real man is a servant to woman. You, after a while, begin to have a somewhat jaded view of women, who as a wider demographic, never mind feminism, but women as a wider demographic are and have been sitting on their hands as these issues have been talked about. They don't give a shit. There's just no concern. There's very clearly no concern for men to be tapped into, no recognition of their humanity. I famously put up posters that said men's rights are human rights. They were stenciled with the word wrong. So we have the MGTOW movement, which are guys who recognize there is no compassion, and instead of trying to reform the system, they've recognized you can't because nobody gives a fuck, social and legal institutions, and instead of trying to reform a society so that these inequities are corrected at some time in the future, they're just leaving these social and legal institutions now and correcting their own lives immediately right now in the present, which is a very productive thing to do. The consequences to the wider society, these guys have been burned so badly, they don't care. The whole thing can burn, they don't mind. It pushed the whole society right off a cliff and into the ocean. And that's where you get the woman bashing, because we see that women do not give a flying shit about men, and when men's issues are raised, the reaction is, fuck you, suck it up, go back to being a useful utility. And that's all I'm going to parse in this video. Thanks everybody for watching, and thanks to Alexa Blue for providing the raw material, and have a lovely day.